Salutations, zoners. I'm live once again, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what's up with America, what's going on with America. It's a great question, one I don't know that I have all the answers to, but I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about what's going on. I've really become so exhausted with politics, not least of which is because, it's like you think a person, all of us do this. You think a person is going to solve your problems, like being a person or believing in a person, and then you end up just getting let down every single time. And that's kind of what politics is. Politics is the idea that you take a side, or you decide what, like within the American ethos, what side of the political spectrum you think you belong on. And that's not an easy task to figure that out. I mean, particularly if you're younger, because when you're younger, you may not even know like what you believe, and so you need to have life experiences and stuff that cultivate things that are important to you or not important to you. Problem is that politics and ideological beliefs are prone to be malleable or change over time. For a lot of people and for most people. You may change your mind on something because you might feel that you have a greater understanding of something. But what I want to talk about is what's been going on in this country is just nothing good. There's nothing good. And I am totally like just apolitical right now. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm like so done with all of it. And the reason is because I think that, to a large extent, I think Donald Trump has abandoned. Well, and maybe he has wanted to do this for a long time. Hey, Juicy Noble, welcome. But maybe Donald Trump has wanted to do this for like for a long time. But some of the red flags that occurred to me during his first term, during 2016. So 2016, he gets elected, and it was maybe a few months after into his first term. A reporter had asked him about WikiLeaks. Now, those of you who don't know WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks was Julian Assange, and he had essentially access to a lot of the stuff, including but not limited to the Hillary Clinton emails. Hey, Robert, what's going on, guys? And so what happened was, uh, a reporter asked him this. He was sitting in the Oval Office, and reporter, and you can look this up on YouTube, but asked him about WikiLeaks. Now, on the campaign trail from like 2015, going forward, he was talking about, oh, we love WikiLeaks and the Hillary Clinton emails and all that stuff, and lock her up, and all that crap, right? So everybody was trying to like figure out what was going on with that. So when he was asked about WikiLeaks, he's like, I don't know anything about WikiLeaks. And I'm like WTF? I mean, this guy couldn't shut up, couldn't talk enough about it. He couldn't shut up about it on the campaign trail. And now he's feigning ignorance. That didn't sit well with me at all. And I'm like, something's not right here. Now, Donald Trump was not my first pick. I liked Ben Carson. Ben Carson was my guy. And I voted for Ron Paul in 2008, and I voted for Ron Paul in 2012. And I guess you could say I'm probably more of a libertarian, but I believe that you have to have some control. It's like some people believe that libertarian is sort of being on the cusp of anarchy, or like being an anarchist. And I'm totally not an anarchist. I believe in our system of government. I believe in the U.S. Constitution. But unfortunately, what's been happening as of late is you have one cross section of the conservative movement. Well, you have the conservative movement that's been completely divided into two. So now you have the MAGA movement, right, which is the Trump sort of crowd, people who support Trump and they're card-carrying Trump supporters and all that sort of thing. And then you have the people that supported Donald Trump but wanted him to go forward with the America First agenda. So now you have these two factions. You have America First conservatives or Republicans, and then you have MAGA conservative so-called Republicans. And unfortunately, Trump has been incrementally drifting further and further away from the conservative and then going like full-on like liberal retard neocon, like with the whole Israel stuff, bombing Iran. I mean, we thought that this was going to be the guy who was not going to bring us into any new wars. This is the guy we thought that was going to bring the cost of gas and groceries down. This is the guy. I mean, like, where's that guy, right? Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. So, like, where's that guy? Where's the Donald? What happened to the Donald Trump dude who was all about, like, not getting us into any new wars and being fiscally conservative and all that stuff? I mean, all that stuff like up and vanished like a fart in the wind. I don't know what happened to any of that stuff, but well, actually, I do know what happened to it. So I'm on I mean, I guess because I'm probably older than a lot of people. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, but not because I I have like connect with family and stuff like that. But I post a lot of stuff on Facebook because, most of the people that I know on Facebook are in my community or in my area and stuff. And so that's why I use that platform. But I can be found on, and like, I don't use, this account, Zone Television, is an account I haven't really used too much over the last like 10 years or so. Only because I've just been doing so many different other things and haven't really sorted out what exactly I'm going to do with the channel. Anyway, sorry for all that that long sort of tangent. But my point is that so I'll probably be using this platform to do more content and engage with people and talk about like how I see the political landscape unfolding. I'm of the opinion that we're in big trouble, and I think we've been in big trouble. We've been in big trouble since like since 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank, and it's just been a steady, slow descent downhill from there. And I think over the last maybe 10 or 20 years, it's been like we've been just going off of a cliff. So on the one hand, you have the Democrat Party, which has gone further and further towards socialism and Marxism. Do any of the Democrats? You ever hear any politician, for that matter, like evoke the name of God or talk about God and country? I mean, Republicans certainly do, but you often wonder, do they do it because they're hello, Phoenix, Agent Phoenix. Agent Phoenix is in the house. SBJ, the Sammy Joe Band, is also in the house. So the Democrat Party has basically just been going, like, and the Republicans kind of just haven't really had any backbone, and they've just been kind of appeasing. But this is all about maintaining the status quo. And so it's the illusion that you have a choice, but it just ends up becoming a false binary choice. Well, if I vote for this party, I'm going to get thus and so. Or if I vote for this party, I'm going to get thus and so. the people in Washington are supposed to represent your, like, it's supposed to represent you. And this kind of goes back to what John Adams, one of the founding fathers, said about um, what was it? John Adams said about the Constitution of the United States was intended for a moral and a religious people, and it is wholly inadequate to any other. Okay, so over time, we've incrementally been drifting into away from the Bible, away from Scripture, and bear in mind, America was founded, some might say conquered or colonialized or whatever, because I don't want to get into the whole Native American thing, and we can have I can have a discussion about that as well, and I can delineate my thoughts about that. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I just want to sort of stay focused on why this country, in my opinion, and I'm not asking anybody to agree with me, but why this country, in my opinion, has been providential. So you had the Puritans that were in Europe. They wanted to get away from the totalitarian control of kings and the Vatican and the Pope and all that stuff. Monolithic control of state power and everything. And so 250 years later, we're sort of back to square one. The very things that the Puritans escaped Europe to come and settle here in America has been corrupted and undermined. But that's only because you've had a steady influx of what you could conceivably call Jacobins and the European thinking. And so the founding fathers spoke extensively about how antithetical the foreign element coming in and diluting the American ethos. But that's exactly what's happened. So now you have all of these ideologies. You have now a very prolific Zionist ideology. You have a very prolific communist and atheist ideology. You have a very prolific Muslim ideology that it's everywhere. And you have, and all of these are antithetical to the Constitution because the Constitution is predicated on Christian biblical principles. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's the idea, and Charlie Kirk had talked a lot about this, and Charlie Kirk was definitely someone who is really educating the young kids as to the core. Now, I don't agree with, it's not to say that I agreed with Charlie Kirk on everything theologically speaking, but he was spot on with respect to, there had to be declarations of faith in all of the states. And I think Maryland was the only Roman Catholic state. And there was only one, I believe there is only one signer of the Declaration that was Roman Catholic, and that was John Carroll. Is it James Carroll or John Carroll? I might be remiss there, but I think it was only one Roman Catholic signed the Declaration of Independence. Now, a lot of atheists like to use the argument, well, the founding fathers were deists. Well, no, they weren't. Most of them had come from Protestant sects. Most of them were Congregationalists. I think some were Lutheran, Baptist, or Methodist, and so forth. But by and large, the founding fathers and the early settlers in America were Protestant Christians. The reason why people come here is because of our way of life, our system of government. But unfortunately, that's also been exploited against Americans who embrace this ideology of a transcendent God, rights coming from a transcendent God. In other words, rights come from above a divinely ontological principle, not from a human being who, like a king, who declares edicts and makes rules and all that sort of stuff. So that's an important thing to understand about the American ethos, is that all of the rights in the Constitution are derived from a divine ontological authority. Okay, so it's like the same. It's the same place that we derive authority, like in numbers, notes, and words. All of these things are instruments, ontological instruments that have weights and measures in the realm of consciousness or in mind. And that's why you can't kill them, you can't destroy them, because they transcend materialism. So unfortunately, what's happened is, and Trump is a materialist. Make no mistake about it. I mean, if you look at the way he lives and the people that he's kept company with, even though I think Trump is from a Protestant background, I think his mother was Scottish. He has gravitated and embraced materialism, and so this is kind of the golden calf. Those of you who are familiar with the Bible or read Scripture understand the problem of the Israelites once they left Egypt. Okay, so if you read in the Old Testament in the book of Exodus, Moses was leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, and there was a point at which they were basically just they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years on a journey that should have only taken them about a month or a few weeks maybe. And they became very, like, they would say things like, "We had it better back in Egypt," So it's what in the New Testament, it says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places, and against the dark things in this world." So that's what's going on here, and the human tendency is to externalize those things and see them as real or genuine threats. And to some degree, you could say, well, yeah, they are. But if God is the author and the finisher of everything, then that leaves no room for evil to flourish and prosper. And this is why Jesus was able to say, "My kingdom is not of this world." And so he wasn't worried about whether they were going to try to kill him or not, because he understood the fundamental principle or concept of ontology and where authority and substance genuinely come from. So this is all a spiritual problem that is playing out in the world, and it's prolific in the world. So I don't agree with what Trump has been doing, and the company's been keeping with okay. So if people like Glenn Beck, if you watch Glenn Beck, if you have heard of Pastor John Hagee from the Cornerstone Church in Texas, there's a whole host of other dispensationalists or whatever. And what is dispensationalism? What is Zionism? Well, if you go back to I think it's the 17th or the 18th century, you have John Calvin, and then you have there's another gentleman, and his name escapes me right now, but Calvinism, the Calvinistic branch of Christendom is not biblical. It's kind of a John Calvin believed in the ancient components of Israel, and that if you read through his dispensationalist doctrine, the platform of it is covered in if you read it, and then about a couple of hundred years later, then you had Theodore Herzl. So this is where the Zionist component comes in. So modern day Zionism is not biblical. What happened is you had evangelical Christians in the United States who were Calvinists, and then you had Theodore Herzl and a few other they're atheists. They weren't even they didn't even believe in God, but it was their idea to create an ethno sort of secular state of Israel, and that's exactly what happened. So, or ended up happening anyway. And Israel, the Israel of today is not the biblical Israel. And the Israel of today would not exist but for Christian Zionism or Christian dispensationalists. Okay? So I believe, I think Charlie Kirk was, for at least up until his demise, was a dispensationalist. I don't believe in dispensationalism. Dispensationalism is the idea that eliciting Armageddon, and because the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, was to reinstate the temple in Israel, and then to bring about Armageddon, and then the rapture, and then of course the rapture. The rapture doctrine is also John Darby. The return of Jesus, okay, the second coming. That comes from John Darby. And those are inferential statements or inferences drawn out of Scripture. And this was kind of the problem with the translation of the Bible and putting the Bible in the hands of parishioners in the laity, because the Catholic Church was going to lose control of the message by having everybody sort of interpreting what the Bible was saying. They didn't want people reading the Bible. They didn't want people being educated either. And that's a whole other discussion. So you have Christian Zionism and Zionism, which was originally propagated by atheists. Okay, and then it was codified in the early to the mid 20th century. I think it was 1914 or 1917, where you had the the formal declaration, and then they started the purge, by the 1940s, and then the return of all of the Jews to Israel, sort of thing. But this was all done. You had atheists or secular atheists doing this under the rubric or through the rubric of religion. In other words, they used religion or faith, which they didn't have any of, but they leveraged the Christian Zionist component out of John Darby's writings and beliefs, and sort of melded or married the two together. I mean, that's kind of a very, very sort of Cliff Notes, cursory dissertation of what happened. It's a lot more detailed and nuanced than that, but the meat and potatoes of it is that modern day Israel is essentially the brainchild of atheists. I mean, you can take that for what it's worth. And so ever since the United States has become entrenched and involved in this, which the Founding Fathers were vehemently against, they were just like out of their minds. They're like, they had, the Founding Fathers had admonished members of the government and Americans not to become entangled with the affairs in other countries. And that's exactly what we've been doing. A foreign country or state was created, and we've been instrumental in propping up a vassal state. And Israel has often been referred to as an aircraft carrier for the United States in the Middle East. And that's more or less what it is. So I want to talk a little bit about, okay, so who funds Hamas? Who funds the Palestinians? And who funds Israel? And this is another question. It's like, where does all the money come from? Where do all the weapons come from? How does this conflict keep perpetuating? And who is doing it and why? I mean, do you think that for a minute that the CIA and the intelligence agencies don't know where Hamas or Palestine or where any of their munitions come from or their weapons? I mean, you scratch your head. It's just like if they can track your cell phone and they can listen in to any conversation that you have on the phone or listen over the airwaves to anything anybody says, how is it not possible, or how is it possible that with all of the technology that we have now with drones and surveillance and satellites and the whole thing, how could we not know like where all of these how these things are happening? So I did a little bit of digging, and apparently, America, for all intents and purposes, has been sort of funding both sides, and this is the CIA, and black operations have been funding both sides of the conflict. And you'd say to yourself, well, what's the fucking point of doing that? I mean, it's self-defeating, you know? What's the point in funding two sides of a conflict when it's a zero-sum game? And the Israelis that are living in Israel and both the Palestinians are being used as pawns. Just like the migrants from South America and paying all of these people to, like, rather than develop the countries in South America and rather than develop third world countries or help them to become industrialized, it made more financial sense to migrate them into first world countries. And it's all about money. All of this stuff is driven by money. If it doesn't make or earn money, you wouldn't have wars. War perpetuates or necessitates the need to create munitions. War perpetuates and necessitates the need to uh, uh, build, all kinds of things. And that's where we're at, unfortunately. So, anyway, if you've just joined, I'm glad you joined. I've been just going off on like rants about how much I'm just disgusted with our government and the country and just all of it, really. I'd rather be riding motorcycles right now, honestly. And you could ride motorcycles too. If you dare.